Long ago, in a sunlit courtyard of ancient Athens, a young student named Elion sat cross-legged under an olive tree, frustrated and fidgeting with a scroll. His teacher, an aged philosopher named Thalos, noticed his unease and asked gently, "What troubles your mind today, Elion?" Elion sighed. "We've learned so much, Master, but it feels like there's a wall, a boundary to what we can know. We've mapped the stars, measured the earth, debated the heavens, yet something tells me we're still in a cage." Thalos smiled knowingly and tapped his staff against the marble. That feeling is the whisper of infinity. Centuries later, in a world of satellites and skyscrapers, we still echo Elion's question. Are there limits to human knowledge? Is there a point where we must accept ignorance and stop asking, why? The book The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch, reimagined here through the voices of Thalos and Elion, challenges us to rethink knowledge itself. It proposes something audacious, that there are no fundamental limits to what we can understand, that we are only at the very beginning of an infinite journey. Let us walk with Elion and Thalos as they rediscover these ideas through timeless dialogue. Knowledge as explanation. One morning, Elion approached Thalos with a question. "Master, what is knowledge really? Is it just facts or something more?" Thalos took a sip from his clay cup and replied, "Knowledge is not mere accumulation of data. It is explanation, deep, meaningful explanations that tell us not just what is, but why it is so. The Pythagoreans knew the lengths of triangles, but Euclid told us why the relationships held. That is the power of explanation. This distinction is vital. Knowledge, Deutsch argues, isn't just prediction or observation. Even ancient civilizations could predict lunar eclipses, but they didn't understand the gravitational dance of celestial bodies. Real knowledge grows from explanatory frameworks, not just patterns. In that sense, said Thalos, a child who asks why the apple falls is already wiser than the elder who memorizes its motion without understanding. The reach of good explanations. Are all explanations equal? Elion asked one afternoon. Some seem elegant, others clumsy. No, said Thalos. Some explanations are better, and the best kind, those rooted in reason and tested by evidence, are hard to vary. That is their strength. Here, Deutsch introduces a powerful concept. A good explanation is not one you can tweak without destroying its structure. For example, the myth that thunder comes from angry gods is easy to modify. Just invent new moods or names for the gods. But Newton's laws change one part, and the whole system crumbles. The better an explanation, the less wiggle room it allows. This resistance to variation is a feature, not a bug. It's what makes science robust and reliable. We must seek explanations that survive scrutiny, Thalos said. They are the threads that will carry us through the darkness. The principle of optimism. One windy evening, Elion shared a troubling thought. But what if we hit a wall? Some mysteries might never be solved. Some problems, incurable diseases, climate collapse, might be beyond us. Thalos placed a hand on his shoulder. There are no such things as insoluble problems, only problems we have not yet solved. That is the principle of optimism. Deutsch's optimism isn't naive. It doesn't say every problem will be solved, only that there's nothing in the fabric of reality that makes it impossible to find solutions if we seek them with the right knowledge. Infinity, Thalos said, pointing to the stars, is not just out there. It lies in our capacity to understand and transform the world. This principle separates the beginning of infinity from books that dwell on limits. It embraces the infinite potential of creative problem solving. The role of fallibilism. Elian grew more curious. But Master, how do we know we're not wrong? Thalos chuckled. We are almost always wrong. But that is the beginning of wisdom. Deutsch emphasizes fallibilism, the idea that no knowledge is certain and every idea is open to challenge. Even our best theories are only tentatively true. What matters is not perfection, but the willingness to correct errors. Progress, said Thalos, is the unfolding dance between conjecture and criticism. We guess, we test, we refine, and through this dance, our understanding deepens. It is error correction, not infallibility, that powers knowledge forward. The importance of creativity. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the courtyard. Elian pondered aloud. If knowledge grows through trial and error, then where do new ideas come from? How do we guess right? Thalos smiled. Through creativity, the universe is not a puzzle with a single solution, but a canvas waiting for imaginative minds. Deutsch sees creativity not as a mystical force or divine gift, but as an inherent part of human cognition, the leap from old ideas to new ones, from earth-centered cosmology to heliocentrism, from myths to mathematics, comes through bold, imaginative steps. Imagination, said Thalos, is the engine of explanation. It is through creative thought that we build the bridges from what is to what could be. The myth of the Enlightenment, sealing. One day, Elian approached a group of skeptics in the city square. They argued that the Enlightenment had brought great advances, but its power was fading, that science had reached its limits. Elian returned to Thalos, troubled. Are they right? Is the Golden Age behind us? Thalos looked solemn. No, Elian. The Enlightenment was not a peak, but a beginning. It gave us the tools, but the journey is infinite. Deutsch warns against the myth of an Enlightenment ceiling, the idea that human progress is finite and will eventually plateau. Instead, he insists that we are only at the dawn of understanding. The methods of reason, criticism, and explanation have no known limits. Each discovery opens doors to new questions. The more we know, the more we realize how much we don't know. That is the beauty of the infinite path. Bad philosophy as the enemy. In the quiet of the temple, Thalos once said, beware, Elian. The greatest threat to progress is not ignorance, but bad philosophy. Deutsch holds that dangerous ideas. Those that resist criticism, stifle inquiry, or deny progress are the true enemies of civilization. These include authoritarian ideologies, relativism, or the belief that truth is unknowable. Even institutions that once sparked discovery, religion, politics, science, can fall prey to dogma. Reason, Thalos said, must always guard against its own corruption. The moment we stop questioning, the moment we accept a boundary without challenge, we turn away from the beginning of infinity. The moral of the story. As the seasons passed, Elian changed. He no longer saw the world as a fixed map of known territories, but as a vast ocean of possibilities. He understood that the universe was not a riddle to be solved once, but a mystery to be explored forever. One evening, watching the stars blink into being, he turned to Thalos. You were right, Master, he whispered. We're not at the end. We're barely at the beginning. And Thalos, now frail but smiling, replied, Yes, Elian. And the journey has no end, only beginnings. The beginning of infinity is not just a book about science. It's a philosophical revolution, a challenge to despair, a rebuke to those who claim there are things we are not meant to know. Through its ideas, we glimpse a deeper truth. That knowledge is infinite, progress is possible, and our destiny is not written, but made. The path ahead is uncertain, but if we carry with us the tools of reason, creativity, and optimism, there is no telling how far we can go. This is just the first step into a world without end. Once, in a quiet village nestled between vast rivers and jagged mountains, a young girl named Layla used to sit under a banyan tree and ask questions that had no clear answers. Why do stars shine? Why can't we live on clouds? Why does a story make us cry even when we know it's not real? Her grandfather, a retired blacksmith with a knack for storytelling, would nod and say, "Child, every answer we chase opens the door to more questions, and that's a beautiful thing." This spirit of endless curiosity echoes through every chapter of The Beginning of Infinity. While the first part laid the groundwork, showing how explanation, not just observation, moves civilization forward, this part dives deeper into the engine behind our progress, the ability to improve our explanations and recognize that knowledge has no natural limit. The heart of this part revolves around a transformative realization: problems are inevitable, but so are their solutions. It's a simple but profound idea. Problems arise when we try to understand or achieve something new, whether it's curing a disease, decoding a star, or designing a better chair. The moment we aim to improve something, we collide with a problem. But what David Deutsch wants us to understand is that problems aren't roadblocks, they're stepping stones. Every solved problem refines our tools, mental, technological, or moral, and sets us up to tackle even bigger ones. This perspective shatters an ancient assumption that was part of many civilizations. From Greek fatalism to medieval superstition, humans once thought there were things we simply couldn't change, fates sealed by the gods, destinies carved in stone. But modern science, especially after the Enlightenment, suggested otherwise. For Deutsch, the Enlightenment wasn't just a cultural wave. It was the first global crack in the wall of stagnation. It introduced the radical notion that progress doesn't have to stop, that we aren't doomed to cycles of rise and collapse, like ancient Rome or Mesopotamia. Now, what drives this infinite possibility? Deutsch argues it's the creation of good explanations. A good explanation doesn't just fit the data, it's hard to vary while still accounting for what we observe. It's not about creating stories that work by coincidence or cleverness. It's about crafting ideas that expose the deep structure of reality. Let's take an example. Imagine you're trying to explain why apples fall to the ground. In ancient times, you might say it's because apples have a natural desire to be with the earth. That explanation sounds poetic but is entirely unfalsifiable. You can't really argue with it or test it. Then Newton came along and said it's due to gravity, a force that acts between two masses. That idea can be tested, measured, challenged, and when Einstein refined it further with general relativity, we didn't discard Newton's idea. We built on it. This continuous improvement of ideas, where each new explanation deepens our understanding, is the engine of progress. But Deutsch doesn't just limit this to science. He believes that this pattern, problem, explanation, improvement, can be applied to every field, from ethics to art to politics. Here's where things get more challenging. Deutsch warns us that although we have access to this infinite path of progress, we can still sabotage ourselves. Civilizations can fall into what he calls static societies, cultures that resist change, discourage questioning, and suppress dissent. These societies might last for centuries, but they stagnate. They become brittle. Think of ancient China's imperial bureaucracy or Europe during the Dark Ages. Without the willingness to question dogma or tolerate error, progress halts. Contrast this with dynamic societies, those that welcome criticism, encourage creativity, and treat errors not as sins, but as opportunities to learn. The key difference isn't intelligence or resources, it's attitude. It's the culture's view of knowledge and how it treats people who challenge the norm. One striking idea here is Deutsch's belief that error is not only natural, it's necessary. All knowledge starts with guesses. Guesses lead to tests. Tests expose flaws, and flaws lead to better guesses. Without the freedom to be wrong, we lose the ability to get things right. It's a process that sounds inefficient, but is actually the most reliable tool we have. Consider how modern medicine developed. For centuries, doctors believed in bloodletting, thinking that draining blood could balance the body's humors. It took rigorous testing, painful errors, and fierce debates to overthrow these ideas. But because science allows for criticism and demands evidence, better explanations eventually prevailed. Antibiotics replaced leeches, vaccines replaced amulets, and lifespans soared. But Deutsch goes even further. He argues that explanations don't just describe reality, they reshape it. When we understand something deeply, we gain the power to manipulate it. Understanding electricity didn't just explain lightning, it led to cities glowing with light. Understanding genetics didn't just explain inheritance, it gave us tools to treat diseases, grow new crops, and ask new questions about life itself. This brings us to a powerful but unsettling truth. With great knowledge comes great risk. The same creativity that builds can also destroy. A society that discovers nuclear energy can light a continent or vaporize a city. This dual nature of knowledge means we must pair our explanations with responsibility. But responsibility requires freedom, and freedom requires an open society. Deutsch believes that only societies committed to truth-seeking, those that tolerate dissent, debate, and critical thinking, can safely wield the power that comes from deep understanding. Censorship, dogma, and authoritarianism don't just oppress people. They block the path to better ideas. They interrupt the feedback loop that makes infinite progress possible. Now, you might wonder, if we know all this, why doesn't every society follow it? Why are we still plagued by misinformation, polarization, and stagnation? Deutsch argues that progress isn't automatic, it's fragile. It requires constant maintenance. Every generation must choose to continue the tradition of criticism, openness, and improvement. If we stop explaining, we stop evolving. One of the most inspiring ideas in this part is the concept that anything not forbidden by the laws of physics is achievable. It's a staggering statement. If no physical law stops us from creating something, then with the right knowledge, tools, and time, we can do it. Want to live on Mars? Build artificial minds? Cure every disease? None of these are blocked by physics. Only our ignorance stands in the way. This isn't just optimism. It's a call to arms. It means that every problem we face is, in principle, solvable. Poverty, climate change, even death. They aren't cosmic curses. They're challenges, waiting for the right explanation. And every explanation begins with someone asking, why not? Returning to the village girl under the banyan tree, Layla didn't know it, but her questions were a spark, not just because they were clever, but because she asked without fear. She didn't assume there were things she couldn't understand. She wasn't satisfied with silence. And that's the spirit Deutsch wants us all to rediscover. The beginning of infinity isn't a place, it's a mindset. It's the moment we realize that our ignorance isn't a wall, It's a frontier, a place not of limits, but of possibilities. And every time we challenge a bad idea, create a better explanation, or imagine a world that doesn't yet exist, we take another step into that infinite horizon, the fabric of explanation. As the wind brushed gently against the olive trees near an old observatory, Armin sat cross-legged, holding a notebook filled with scribbles and ideas. "Why does knowledge seem endless?" he asked aloud. His companion, a quiet yet brilliant thinker named Eshan, leaned forward and said, "Because every explanation we create opens up new realms to explore." This was not just a poetic musing, it was the heart of the idea Deutsch wanted to explore, the infinite reach of knowledge. We've already seen that human progress is driven not by our tools or technology, but by our capacity to explain. Now, in this next phase, the focus sharpens. If progress is about good explanations, what exactly makes one explanation better than another? Why do some ideas lead us toward truth and others to error? The power of fallibility. Eshan pointed toward the stars. Centuries ago, we thought the heavens were fixed, eternal. But we were wrong, and that mistake, it taught us something. Arman nodded. So being wrong isn't the end. It's the beginning? Deutsch insists on this exact point. Errors aren't just obstacles, they are essential stepping stones. The more we embrace fallibility, the closer we get to understanding reality. The real tragedy isn't being wrong, it's refusing to admit it, refusing to improve upon our explanations. A good explanation, according to Deutsch, is hard to vary while still accounting for what it explains. This principle reveals something subtle but powerful. When an explanation is difficult to alter without breaking it, it's likely capturing something true about the world. It's why myths, while emotionally satisfying, often fail as explanations. They are too easy to change. You can swap out gods or creatures, and the story still flows. But with a good scientific theory, every part is necessary. Alter just one assumption, and it collapses. The jump to universality. Arman, do you think we're nearing the limits of what humans can understand? Eshan asked, staring into the fire. Maybe. But what if there are no limits? This possibility, the absence of knowledge boundaries, is what Deutsch calls the jump to universality. Some systems, once they reach a certain point, can do anything that's physically possible. For instance, a simple Turing machine with enough time and memory can perform any computation that any other computer can. So, it is with explanations. When we created universal methods, like the scientific method or mathematical logic, we didn't just solve a few problems. We created tools that could solve an unlimited range of problems. Within the laws of physics, this leap to universality is one of the most profound shifts in human history. It's what allowed humans to move from local, tradition-bound knowledge to global dynamic progress. Eshan explained this by drawing a simple diagram in the dirt. Look, when we built the first printing press, it didn't just print a book, it printed ideas, and those ideas weren't confined to one village or one century. They multiplied, evolved. Arman looked up. So, with each new idea, we're actually becoming capable of infinitely more? Exactly. Creativity and the infinite path. But this progress isn't automatic. It's driven by something deeply human. Creativity. This is where Deutsch distances himself from those who see knowledge as mere data or logic. Knowledge, in his view, isn't a matter of copying or storing. It's created. And creativity, that unpredictable spark, is at the core of every breakthrough. But what fuels creativity? This question stirred a deep silence between Armin and Eshan. Eshan finally said, maybe it's our dissatisfaction with the status quo. the feeling that the world could be more just, more understandable, more beautiful. Deutsch argues that humans are unique in the universe, not because we have big brains or opposable thumbs, but because we are universal explainers. We can understand phenomena far beyond our evolutionary needs. We can grasp quantum physics, imagine alien worlds, and debate ethical systems. And this ability, this creativity, is the engine behind the beginning of infinity, the moral dimension of knowledge. Arman recalled an earlier conversation about ethics. If we can explain the universe, can we also explain what's right or wrong? Eshan smiled. Yes, because morality, too, is a problem-solving endeavor. Deutsch doesn't limit his notion of progress to science or technology. He sees moral knowledge as part of the same evolutionary process. Problems like slavery, inequality, and oppression were once seen as permanent features of life, but we outgrew them, not by force alone, but through better ideas. Moral progress, like scientific progress, comes from creating better explanations, ones that withstand criticism and lead to fewer conflicts. This is an optimistic and empowering view of human nature. It means we're not doomed to repeat the past. If we treat injustice as a solvable problem, we can move forward. Eshan stood and paced. Imagine a world where people didn't just inherit values. They questioned them, refined them, made them better. That's the kind of world Deutsch is pointing toward. Optimism and the misuse of pessimism. Of course, not everyone shares this vision. Some argue that infinite progress is an illusion, that we're heading toward collapse, whether it's environmental doom, technological singularity, or political decay. Pessimism often dominates public discourse, but Deutsch draws a line between problems and unfixable doom. His key insight: all evils are due to insufficient knowledge. This doesn't mean problems won't arise, only that none are beyond the reach of improvement. Problems are inevitable, yes, but so are solutions. Pessimism, when turned into fatalism, is self-defeating. It robs people of the will to create, to innovate, to imagine a better future. Optimism, in Deutsch's framework, is not the naive belief that everything will work out, but the belief that problems are solvable with the right knowledge. Why the universe is understandable. That raises an ancient and profound question. Why is the universe so amenable to understanding? Eshan threw a pebble into the still water. Why doesn't the universe hide its secrets better? Because, Arman replied, the universe doesn't conspire against us. It just is. And our minds are part of it. Deutsch sees this compatibility between human minds and the laws of nature, not as coincidence, but as profound. We evolved on a small planet for very local survival, yet we're able to comprehend galaxies, black holes, and quantum particles. That's extraordinary. The universe, it turns out, is not a riddle designed to frustrate us. It's a system governed by rules, and those rules can be known, not completely, never completely, but ever more deeply. And in that ever-deepening understanding lies the path to infinity, the role of good explanations. So what should guide us as we explore that path? The answer is the search for good explanations. Eshan explained this with a story from his youth. There was a time I believed in astrology. It comforted me, but when I asked why Mercury, being in retrograde, would affect my decisions, the explanations fell apart. Good explanations are robust. They don't rely on authority or tradition. They're testable, falsifiable, and open to improvement. That's why science works. It's not because scientists are smarter or more moral, but because the method encourages criticism, error correction, and better explanations. Look around, said Arman. Almost everything we value, electricity, medicine, transportation, even freedom came from people pursuing better explanations. Deutsch's vision here is bold. If we continue this pursuit without limit, there's no telling how far we can go. We can cure diseases that today seem incurable. We can explore worlds beyond our solar system. We can build societies more just and compassionate than ever before. And the only thing standing in our way is bad explanations. Conclusion: the responsibility of understanding. As the fire dwindled and stars emerged, Eshan said, "So, the beginning of infinity, it's not a prophecy, is it?" Armand shook his head. "No, it's a responsibility. We are not passengers in a determined universe. We are participants in an open-ended journey. Each generation inherits the knowledge of the previous and has the power to expand it. And through that expansion, we shape not just our future, but the future of everything, conscious and capable of wonder. That is what makes the beginning of infinity so exhilarating and so urgent. Let us not squander it." A man once asked, "If everything is destined to be explained one day, then why do we struggle now? Why not wait for the future when answers are clearer?" But the fallacy here is waiting. Waiting doesn't bring progress. Only questioning, reasoning, and creating does. David Deutsch reminds us again and again, problems are inevitable, but so are solutions. That's the heart of the beginning of infinity. The book closes not with an answer, but with an invitation to keep questioning, to keep reaching, and to never assume the story has ended. We are not passive observers in a clockwork universe. We are active participants in creation itself. Every time we ask why, every time we create a new explanation, we are not just solving a problem. We are becoming a deeper part of reality. But how do we know if we're on the right path? Deutsch's answer is clarity. Explanations must be hard to vary while still accounting for what they explain. That's why mythology falls short and science grows, because scientific ideas can be tested, improved, and corrected. And that leads us to an idea that cuts through everything Deutsch has said: fallibilism. We are capable of great knowledge, but we are never infallible. No matter how advanced we become, we can always be wrong. And this, paradoxically, is our strength. Because if we know we can be wrong, we stay curious. We remain willing to listen, to change, and to grow. Think about it. Many problems we face today, climate change, inequality, misinformation, seem too vast, too tangled. But Deutsch flips the perspective. These aren't signs that progress is failing. They are signs that progress is necessary. The only real danger is giving up the search for better explanations. He calls this search the beginning of infinity. Because once a culture, a civilization, or even a single person begins to use reason without boundaries, the potential for improvement is unbounded. There is no natural stopping point. Every discovery opens new questions. Every solution reveals better goals. This challenges something deep within us. Many of us have grown up believing that some things will always be beyond our reach, certain truths unknowable, certain limits unbreakable. But Deutsch urges us to look again. What if we removed those limits from our minds? What if the only true limits are the ones we haven't dared to question? One of the most powerful ideas from this final portion of the book is about moral progress. It's easy to accept scientific progress. We see it in our phones, medicine, and engineering. But moral progress, that feels less certain. Yet Deutsch insists that moral knowledge grows just like scientific knowledge, through conjecture, criticism, and open debate. Practices like slavery or discrimination persisted for centuries, not because they were inevitable, but because people were discouraged from questioning them. So, if progress in values is possible, what's holding us back? Often, it's relativism, the idea that all cultures and values are equally valid, and there is no better or worse. But if we accept that, how do we improve? Deutsch doesn't claim that moral truths are simple or obvious, but he does believe they exist. And if they exist, then it's our responsibility to seek them. And here's where the book touches something deeply personal, because it's not just about science or philosophy or history. It's about you. You, the individual, are capable of infinite growth. You can be a knowledge creator every time you ask, why do I believe this? Or could I be wrong? You are doing what all great progress depends on. You're making your life and the world more explainable. There's another idea that needs reflection, the role of optimism, but not blind optimism. Deutsch describes a rational optimism, the belief that problems are solvable, not because we know how, but because there's nothing stopping us from figuring it out except our own resignation. This also means that suffering, injustice, even death are not permanent conditions. They are problems that might not be solvable today, but if we continue improving our explanations, they may be solvable tomorrow. Think of what this means for humanity. For centuries, we've believed in golden ages of the past, or utopias in the distant future. But Deutsch proposes something more grounded and more inspiring, a steady climb, powered by our thirst for truth. Not a world without problems, but a world where problems become opportunities for creativity. He offers a clear warning too. Progress is not automatic. It can stall or even reverse. Societies can choose to stop questioning, to suppress dissent, to revere dogma over discovery. But this isn't fate. It's a choice we can make differently. And one choice we must face is how we use our growing power. Technologies like AI, genetic engineering, or space travel offer unimaginable possibilities, but also risks. If we create without understanding, if we expand without wisdom, we risk destroying what we've built. That's why the book keeps returning to the same lesson. Explanations matter, not slogans, not authority, not tradition, only ideas that survive criticism and offer deeper understanding should guide us. Deutsch also speaks about spaces of possibility. The physical world isn't just what exists now. It's everything that could exist. And our job, through reason, is to explore that space, not with brute force, but with understanding. We don't just want to build stronger machines. We want to build better explanations about the universe, about life, about ourselves. So when you feel small or overwhelmed, remember this. You are already part of the beginning of infinity. Every time you learn something new, ask a difficult question, or challenge your own views, you are contributing to the unbounded growth of knowledge. And if you ever doubt your role in all this, remember what Deutsch reminds us. The difference between a person and a stone is not complexity, it's the capacity to explain. That is what makes us human. That is what gives us hope. In the end, The Beginning of Infinity is not just a book about science or philosophy. It is a book about the potential locked inside each of us. It tells us that truth is not found. It is created. It tells us that improvement has no ceiling. And it tells us that the best time to begin that journey is always now. If you've made it this far, thank you. If you found meaning in this exploration, if it sparked a question or lit a fire of curiosity in you, then I invite you, like this video, share it with someone curious like you, and let's keep the conversation and the progress going.